Well, millions of Americans are voting today, with recent polls showing a close race between Democrats and Republicans for control of Congress. Some will head to the polls amid warnings of political violence and threats to election security.
Last night, Arizona's Assistant Secretary of State joined the stream to discuss just how that state is ensuring a safe experience for voters.
We've been providing training exercises for all of our county election workers in partnership with our law enforcement partners from the federal level down to the local level. And so we've been working with them for well over the last 4 years, really since the beginning of our administration here at the Secretary of State's office, and even before that. But we've been holding training exercises that really contemplate what we've considered some of the worst case scenarios that could happen on election day, before election day, after election day, whether they be cybersecurity threats, physical safety, and what everybody needs to do in order to respond and ensure that voters are safe.
So CBS News election law expert and political contributor David Becker joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. So the Justice Department is already sort of out there. A Justice Department plans to monitor polls in 24 states to make sure that they're complying with federal laws. Is this typical?
Yeah, it is actually typical.
Okay.
I'm a former Department of Justice lawyer. I used to do this every 2 years. It's very common in a federal election cycle for the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division, the voting section within it, to go and send lawyers and observers out. And often it's just to make sure things are going as they're supposed to go. It's not necessarily an indication that they expect problems there. Oftentimes it's for things like minority language access or disability access. So I don't think we should read too much into this. This is a very normal thing for the Justice Department to do.
But what's not normal, David, it seems, are these reported threats against election workers that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. I've worked as a reporter in countries where, I know that when people go to the polls, there are people hovering over them with AK-47s to make sure that when you come out of that polling booth, you voted for who they're telling you to vote for, or you risk violence. So how real is the possibility of violence on a day like today? And why have we seen these threats increasingly in the last couple of years against election workers?
So we've seen threats against election workers, in particular election officials, for 2 years now. They've been subjected to an onslaught of threats and harassment. It's been awful. The Justice Department established an election threats task force, which received well over 1,000 reported threats, investigated some, have prosecuted some. And I talk to election officials all over the country. They're exhausted from these things, and yet they're still doing this job so well. They're going to run this election incredibly well, probably record turnout for a midterm. When lies are out there about an election being stolen, the 2020 election in reality was the most secure, transparent, verified, and scrutinized election in American history. Over 60 courts confirmed the outcome, and we sit here 2 years after that election, and there still has not been a shred of evidence presented to any court or law enforcement agency that would call that election into question. And yet, tens of millions believe that lie, and they've been threatening and harassing election workers all over the country. The good news is over 44 million people have already voted. These efforts at intimidation appear to be very sporadic and have been dealt with. And we're going to see that 44 million number, by the way, go up, because that doesn't count all the mail ballots that are still yet to come in. We could hit well over 50 million early votes, and we could exceed the record for a midterm election of 118 million voters that we saw in 2018. I mean, we're likely to see very high turnout. And so far, what I'm hearing today is there are some lines, there are a very small number of problems, but everything is going smoothly and there haven't been any incidents.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up to that, David? Throughout the course of American history, presidents have lied to the American people. That's not, I'm not breaking any news there. But I wonder, in the case of former President Trump, who continues to lie about the results of the 2020 election, do you believe, and I'm trying to sort of play the devil's advocate, if I'm a supporter of President Trump and I believe that he made my life better during the time of his presidency, and that he was honest with me, as I'm talking about, I'm channeling a supporter of President Trump, that and if he says that the election was stolen and I believe him, do you think that if he were to come out and say, after all these court challenges, it does appear that I lost the 2020 election, Joe Biden's a legitimate president of the United States, do you think that that would change the way people feel about it? In other words, you got a former president of the United States saying to his supporters that I was done wrong. Yeah. And if he came out and said, turns out I was wrong, that the election was legitimate, would that change the tenor?
So Major Garrett and I wrote a book about this, The Big Truth, about how the lie has really metastasized within the Trump community. And it's really not even so much about him anymore. If he went away tomorrow, and I don't think it's realistic to expect he would give up the big lie.
Yeah.
He's made a campaign of it. He's made probably $500 million he's raised off the sincerely disappointed supporters of the former president. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for people who have experienced an electoral disappointment. We all have. There's no one in America who hasn't seen their candidate lose an election in the last decade. But to see them be the targets of this long-term grift, to see them be mined for continued income and rage is really troubling. Because the proper thing to do is, and we talk about it in the book, what Vice President Gore did in 2000, what Vice President Nixon did in 1960, say, hey, look, I don't totally agree with everything that happened here. We exhausted our remedies under the rule of law. We're going to do what's best for the country and wish our opponent the best, and then we're going to fight in the next campaign to win. That's the right thing to do, and we're not seeing that in this last 2 years. It's led to a really toxic environment.
You know, you talk about the big lie. I don't even think that's necessary anymore to just outright say that didn't happen. All you got to do is say, I don't know if it happened.
Right,
all you got to do is plant that seed of doubt, and that
Right.
takes on a life of its own. Which brings me to, you talked about the early voting, how the numbers might be even larger than we expect. We talked about Pennsylvania earlier. They're not going to start counting those ballots until today, which means it's going to take time.
That's right.
It's going to take time because there are a lot of ballots. It's going to take time because the races are incredibly close. But in that time, people often plant doubt. I want you to clarify things for us. You know, if it seems like it's taking forever, and we, the media, we're pretty bad at this too, because we say very early on, oh, early projections are X, Y, Z, when there's no way that we can know the outcome. We have the equations and ways to figure out why that projection is going to be accurate, but people don't know that. So can you explain to them, if it seems like it's taken long to get these final numbers, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and also I want to recognize it's normal to want to know who won right away. I mean, I want to know at 8:01 p.m. who won all of the races. That's normal. But there are people out there, particularly losing candidates who want to exploit that natural desire to win and make you think there's something wrong. The simple truth is we've never known actually who won an election on election night. We just thought we did because the margins were larger and because some states, Florida is a good example, counts their ballots really quickly. Why does Florida count their ballots pretty quickly? Because the Republican legislature in Florida listened to election officials and gave them rules that allowed them to basically process their ballots as quickly as possible and report them out. Republican legislatures in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan did not do that. And so it's going to take longer in those states. That is normal. Election officials aren't taking a break. They're not like at 10 p.m. saying, we're out punching the clock and going home. They're working through the night. These are our neighbors. These are members of our community. These are oftentimes volunteers who've been working really hard. And we're already seeing people who think their candidates might lose try to precede the notion that there's something nefarious going on.
So, David, with the former president griped so much about the state of Pennsylvania, it's been 2 years since the last election. Why haven't the Republicans in Pennsylvania or the legislature there fixed the rules so that we wouldn't be here today? There's been 2 years to fix it, but there's still people talking about it today. What's wrong with Pennsylvania? Don't trust what happens in Pennsylvania. You had 2 years to fix it.
That's exactly right.
It's not just Pennsylvania, as he pointed out.
No, I know, but
states that chose not to do
Wisconsin
that.
and Michigan are also good examples of this. And election officials of both parties, this needs to be stressed, throughout all of those states went to their legislatures and said, please, we need these tools. We need the same tools that Florida and Ohio and Georgia have, also Republican legislatures, to give us the ability to report out these results quicker. The ballots have all been cast by election night, right? So it's not a question of ballots coming in late. Ballots were already cast. It's a question of how long does it take to verify the signatures on the absentee ballot envelopes, to make sure the person didn't vote twice. Every state has those procedures. This is good for integrity. If it's taking a little extra time, no, that's because they're making sure that the election and the ballots have integrity and they're getting the answer right rather than fast.
And we won't be able to give you the answer correctly. I can only talk for Pennsylvania. There was resistance to expanded early voting. So if there's going to be resistance to expanding early voting options, there might be resistance to, counting on the other end as well.
Right.
I don't know, but maybe we'll talk to somebody about that.
David, always great to have you, my friend. We'll see
you
you later this evening on our Democracy Desk, which is a brand new thing that we're doing at CBS News for our election coverage. David will be sitting there. Thank you very much, David, as always.
Thank you both.
Appreciate it.